Welcome, everybody. Hello, and thank you for attending the La Plata Dems Club Zoom meeting. We do this every month. The goal is to bring together all Democrats, from the most conservative to the most progressive, to celebrate our shared values and appreciate who we are, and to work together to put more Dems in office. I'd like to acknowledge our club lunch sponsor, Albrechta and Albrechta Law Firm. They've been supporting this lunch for several years now. And when we used to have it in person, that mattered a little more, but now that we're on Zoom and it's relatively free, but they're a great law firm. If you need legal help, please think about Albrechta and Albrechta here in Durango. While I'm reading out the rest of the information, I ask you to save the chat link that I put, the link that I put in the chat for LPEA's election info and candidate background statements. Everyone's asked to stay muted except for the speaker, myself, and Gwen Unger, who will be helping with questions. So audience, if you want to submit a question, please use the chat feature on Zoom. We have a number of questions that we have out, and then maybe we'll intersperse them. Gwen, what do you think? Ask one of ours. If we get a bunch of questions in the chat that are different. So please do not unmute yourself and speak. Just send your questions and make sure they're to everyone in the chat window. So if you're having trouble with internet connectivity, you may want to disable your video. Audio only works on slower connections a lot better. This Zoom meeting is being recorded and will be available for within a day or so for viewing on our YouTube channel. You just put La Plata Democrats in the YouTube search, and I'll put the link in the chat as well. You can choose speaker mode if you want, which is typically in the upper right corner of your little box, which will bring up a larger video of the person speaking. I'd like to encourage everyone to donate to the La Plata County Dems in this important election years. It keeps our office rented, and we can accumulate funds ahead of the need. Monthly donations are particularly appreciated, and you can set those up on ActBlue. Monthly donations make it easy to give to the party with relatively little pain. So this is our 8th club meeting for this year. We're working to bring some great programs for you in the future. If you have any announcements to make, please enter something in the chat window and we'll recognize you at the end of the session. So how this works is we'll give each candidate 3 to 5 minutes of an opening remark. Then we move to Q&A. So each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer each question. Instead of, or less, if it doesn't need it, instead of picking an order randomly, I'll just go in number order. So we're going to do the candidates for District 1 first, then District 4. So District 1 incumbent, Kirsten Sheehan will go first, then Dusty Mars, then Tim Wheeler for District 4, and then John Purser. So Kirsten, let's hear your opening statement.
Great. Thank you so much, Karen, and thank you to the La Plata Democrats for hosting this. It's a great opportunity, and I hope a lot of people, even if they're not here, will watch it on your YouTube channel. So I'm a great board director. I'm a lousy candidate. I hate doing this stuff, but I'm going to try. Okay, here we go. So these are super exhilarating times. We've got the Sunnyside Community Solar Coal coming on. We've got new lines and a new substation in the works for Pagosa. We've got new power supply opportunities. We're no longer tied to, with 5% of our portfolio, we can now seek more affordable, reliable power for our members. 50 years ago, we didn't have the tools to be able to do our own electricity, but we have that now. Industry-wide advances in storage, distributed energy, beneficial electrification, super efficient heating and cooling, microgrids, regional transmission, small nuclear, hydrogen has changed that. We can now do what nobody could do 50 years ago, and we can steer our own ship. Co-ops were essential in our early days. Back when we started, we had a couple of hydro projects. There was one at Lemon Dam, and there was a project on the San Juan in Pagosa. We also had federal hydropower, but there was no way for us to build our own power plants. We couldn't afford to it. So we came together and we went to a G&T. That G&T went bankrupt. So then we had to move to Tri-State. And bankruptcy is something that we have to be concerned about. We always have to be aware of what are our partners doing, what are their strengths, and is it time to cut those ties? Is it time to cut those ties because we are no longer being treated as members, we're just being treated as a contract? Is it time to cut those ties because that aircraft carrier has gotten too big and it can't be nimble enough to take advantage of all those fabulous distributed energy and other advances that I was talking about? And the board decided back in April that yes, it is that time, which means in April 2026, we will be having a new power supplier. These next 2 years are super critical in figuring that out. We have to figure out who our partners are going to be. Are we going to rent or are we going to buy? What terms are we going to be looking for? How clean do we want our portfolio to be? How affordable can we make our portfolio? How do we make sure we have the capacity to serve our members when they need electricity and where they need electricity? Those are really super important questions that we're dealing with now and that we will be continuing up to and through April of 2026. It is not done in April of 2026. We have to continue growing because you can't build a big project in 2 years. It takes many years. So you have to do this in phases. We'll have these phases. And for a while, we may be buying some of our power from Tri-State because that is going to make sense. Is that always going to happen? Who knows? We don't know. But you have to be very nimble. You have to be looking forward to it. One of the things I like to say is it's complicated. And sometimes I hear people say it's complicated as in, well, don't worry about it. It's complicated. You don't understand it. And that's not at all what I'm saying. What I'm saying is this is a nuanced, complex, complicated project. And isn't that fabulous? Our staff has a chance to really dive into this and really go for it. And we as a board have a chance and have the responsibility to really steer us in the right direction. And I believe over here in District 1 that I'm your best choice to help steer that board and to steer us into our future. And I would appreciate your vote. And I would appreciate you telling 5 of your friends to vote for me too. Thank you so much. And thank you, Karen and the Dems.
Thank you, Kirsten. And now we'll hear from Dusty Mars, who's running against Kirsten for District 1.
Well, thanks for the opportunity to speak again. I appreciate the forum and to hear all of the background of those that are running. It's neat to see how my experience kind of aligns with our shared goals of affordable, reliable, secure electrical power. I was asked to run for this position by some of the current members of LPEA, I think just to gain kind of a bigger voice in what their concerns are with what was going on. And so, and the reasons I was asked, I think I can go through. I graduated cum laude from Colorado School of Mines in the early 2000s. If you're not familiar with that, it's a top-ranked engineering institution. And I've accumulated a wealth of experience across various fields, all relating to energy or service to the community. As a nuclear engineer for the U.S. Department of Defense, I gained a pretty solemn respect for the potential that fission and fusion could hold. And I've got the knowledge base to evaluate those opportunities if they were ever proposed. I don't know of many other nuclear engineers in the area, but I'm sure there's some. As a petroleum engineer and an engineering department supervisor, I led teams in designing innovative power solutions for multi-million-dollar projects. My work's always focused on kind of advancing technology and improving efficiency, which I believe are kind of crucial for our future energy systems, especially, with this impending 2-year time frame that we've got to try to work through these. I've got a deep connection to this community. It dates back to the 1800s. My family does. I've got a long-standing commitment to this area as home. And I've got a background in education as well. I served as a math teacher through a selective training program for an alternative licensure. And I've received some recognition from the Secretary of State for outstanding performance. And I just bring that up to kind of highlight my dedication to the community. I mentioned my leadership role in engineering and management. My role at ConocoPhillips, I was selected for leadership panels and technical authority boards, where we developed specifications for rotating equipment that significantly reduced carbon emissions. So this experience kind of underscores, my commitment to sustainability and environmental stewardship. Using the tools that we have at hand, we were able to reduce the carbon footprint by thousands of tons per year of CO2. Currently, I operate my family farm. We produce high quality hay and deliver that hay to about almost 100 different regular customers scattered throughout La Plata and Archuleta County. So I get to get around and hear kind of what the concerns are regarding this from other people and other members in the LPEA. But part of my farm asset involves managing electric center pits and high voltage systems. And so I've got some practical experience that's given me, a thorough understanding of really our energy needs and the importance of that reliable, affordable, and seasonal nature of farm business that kind of constrains me to making the most of every moment of the growing season and harvesting season. But it also gives me some flexibility to be able to devote time to this too. So I just kind of sum up that experience is I've got a lot of background on working with boards, especially in a technical capacity. I've got a pretty relevant and recent education and training background, having graduated in the 2000s and worked on some, innovative technology here in the last couple decades. So I think I bring a fresh perspective, and where we're going, we need leaders that have navigated this already, the innovative side of the energy industry, in a manner that doesn't alienate half the membership, as the field kind of the previous board has, speaking with other people. I fully support using clean energy, and I'm even more committed to ensuring that the board's decisions reflect the diverse needs and aspirations of the demographics in our district, not just those with the money to throw at climate change, but we need to ensure that when the membership takes a survey on what the priority of La Plata electric concerns are, that we don't let our own agenda or that of special interest kind of usurp those priorities. But I just hope that you can see it in my face and hear in my voice that I'm passionate about bringing a balanced, kind of forward-thinking approach to the board, and one that actually prioritizes reliability, affordability, and sustainability rather than just saying it. I ask for your support and your vote just to ensure that District 1 specifically is represented by someone who's not only qualified, but deeply committed to serving all our community needs. So thanks for the time again. This is fun.
All right, thanks, Dusty. Our next opening statement is from the incumbent for District 4, Tim Wheeler.
Yeah, welcome everyone. Thanks, Karen and the Dems, and all of you who are participating today for providing and attending the forum. I'm Tim Wheeler. I'm currently a member of the board of La Plata Electric Association, and I want to remind everyone that the following statement and my responses in this forum are my personal opinion, and I do not speak on behalf of the co-op or the board. I'm a candidate today. As your District 4 board director the past 6 years, I brought my lifetime of business and leadership skills to my work as your director. I come from a successful career in the high-tech industry in engineering and marketing leadership positions, and I've been a successful business owner in the Durango area, a Main Avenue business owner for 12 years. And I've been applying my career experience as your District 4 board director during my 2 terms. During the 30 years I have lived in La Plata County, I've donated many hours and much effort in various board and other volunteer activities. I love our community, all of Southwest Colorado, including Archuleta County. And I try my best to give back something of value every day to the future of this remarkable corner of the world. Some of the accomplishments achieved during my first 2 terms of service include I've been elected to LPEA's treasurer position by the board in 5 of the last 6 years, and I was the board VP for 1 year. For 5 years, I've been the chairperson for the Finance and Audit Committee, which, amongst other things, established yearly financial goals for the co-op, something which had never been done previously, and we initiated a new budgeting process leading to greater financial transparency and results, including keeping controllable costs well below our peers. I was a member of the broadband committee that set a broadband strategic goal for LPEA. I served as LPEA's representative to Fast Track, which is LPEA's broadband subsidiary, for 6 years, which we sold at the end of 2023, marking a return on investment to the members and furthering the LPEA broadband strategic goal partnership. We have reduced our greenhouse gas emissions by over 10%. We cut wholesale rates by 4%. We returned $3 to $4 million a year in capital credit refunds to members. We expanded local solar production with the opening of this 1.7 megawatt Sunnyside Community Solar Garden, offering reduced electric bills for income qualified members. And we voted to exit the restrictive contract with Tri-State so that we can take control of our energy future, which will allow us to better serve members through a locally secured, diverse, and cleaner power supply. But the work isn't done. We will exit the Tri-State contract on April 1, 2026. I'm working hard to ensure a smooth, reliable, and financially sound transition from Tri-State. The power supply transition and opportunities to build a utility of the future will require strong, experienced, and informed board leadership. I've spent the last 6 years as your LPEA board member, developing the knowledge, experience, and wisdom to meet our shared vision. I'm ready and motivated to continue to serve you and LPEA for another term. With your vote, I will continue using my leadership skills to make sure our transition into our energy future meets the promise it foretells. Together, we will build the system all LPEA members deserve. Your LPEA ballot will be sent around September 12th. Please be sure to vote. And please vote for me if you live in District 4. And thank you all for coming and listening today.
Thank you, Tim. Our next speaker is a challenger for District 4, John Purser.
Hello. First off, thank you very much to the Democratic Club for hosting this forum. It's important that LPEA members get some insight and perspective on their board. LPEA has a budget in excess of $100 million a year, 70 million or more for power. If you don't believe there are special interests who want a part of that money, you are incredibly naive or delusional. I've been an advocate for increased transparency, including policies to address the purchasing process that includes explicit definition of vendor requirements and publications of requests for proposals. These are transparency requirements similar to what government agencies at all levels have to comply with. My request for transparency has been met with a rude and hostile response from board members. Writing in the Herald, Joe Lewandowski, in an opinion piece lacking basic civility, called me a liar, an hysterical liar. John Witchell and Ted Compton have attacked me on social media posts. Board members have suggested that I'm casting aspersions upon their good character and that they comply with LPEA policy on ethics and conflict of interest. Let's have a look at compliance with LPEA policy, bylaws, and state law. First off, you'll notice we're having the election in summer, not spring. This is because the election originally scheduled for the spring was postponed due to a failure to comply with LPEA Policy 105, Elections and Voting Procedure. This policy is mandated by state law, and state law sets minimum requirements for the policy. In March, I brought this failure of compliance to the attention of Graham Smith, the general counsel. The response was to reschedule the election. In rescheduling the election, our board has never acknowledged their failure of compliance with state law. Our board also knowingly violates the law in terms of privacy policy. They collect personal information in their marketing email, WhatsApp. They have not disclosed why they collect information, who it's shared with, and why. This is a clear violation of Colorado privacy law. The LPEA website and WhatsApp marketing news email have no privacy policy attached. Colorado has a sunshine law that defines open meetings. Open meetings apply to electric cooperatives. Our cooperative does not record committee meetings where policy is reviewed and defined. Our cooperative also does what's called rubber stamping. They exit executive session and do a public vote to approve actions taken in executive session. But they never tell you what those actions are. Again, a violation of open meetings. The election policy of LPEA states that materials, including the trademark, are not to be used. LPEA materials are not to be used in election materials, including the LPEA trademark. If you go to Tim Wheeler's election website, you'll find material directly taken from the LPEA website, including the LPEA trademark. This is a clear and blatant violation of policy. Tim's shaking his head, folks. Go look at his website. It's right there. The LPEA website contains the definition of board members' duties and responsibilities. These duties include compliance with state law and policies of LPEA. The entire board has failed in this. It's a shame that only 2 districts are being contested. And thank you, Dusty, for contesting Archuleta County. None of the incumbents should be retained. So when the board members claim they respect LPEA policy on ethics and conflict of interest, recognize the respect and adherence they've shown to election policy in Colorado law. You can believe board members' failure of compliance is either through incompetence and ignorance or intentional through a lack of ethics. Either way, the board should be replaced. You can start this process by voting for myself and Dusty Mars in the upcoming election. You can take a greater interest in LPEA policy and board actions, and I'd love to see more candidates at next year's election. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Karen,
Yeah.
before there's a question that kind of indicates to me that we probably need to explain how the board works. So if you give me just a minute, I'll run through that real quick so that people understand what's going on. So within LPEA, there are 4 districts. District 1 is Archuleta County. District 2 is South and West La Plata County. District 3 is the city of Durango, and District 4 is the north and east part of La Plata County. So there are 3 directors for each district, and they serve 3-year terms. So every year there's 1 director's position open in each district. As John Purser mentioned, there were 2 incumbent directors for districts 2 and 3 who did not have a challenger. So they are automatically reelected. But we've got District 1, which again is Archuleta, and District 4, which is East and North La Plata County, where we have somebody running. So all of the members in each of the districts are represented at all times by 3 directors on the board. And again, every year there's 1 position open for each district. So that's what we're doing here now, is we're talking to the candidates for District 1 and District 4 because those are the contested districts. Okay, thank you.
All righty, now we'll get to the Q&A section, and we have some questions in the chat, but we'll get to those in a minute. and I think Gwen answered a couple, so that's good. So we're giving everybody a 2-minute window to answer each. And our first question is for the incumbents only. And we'll just start with Kirsten, and then Tim. And then the rest of the questions are for all candidates. So this is kind of to address a background. So incumbents, what are your biggest concerns for the split from Tri-State? What do you think the actual cost will be to members? And I'm going to post a little background statement in the chat that just is from the LPEA website. So it says, background is that they voted in March of this year to withdraw from Tri-State, et cetera, and the final fee will not be available until March 2026. Now, I don't know if that means available to the public or available to the board, but the question, I'll repeat it. What are your biggest concerns for the split from Tri-State, and what do you think the actual costs will be for members? Kirsten.
Great, thank you for that question. So my biggest concerns are if we stay with Tri-State or if we leave from Tri-State, and we are leaving, is the same, and that's going to be increasing cost. I cannot see how Tri-State's going to be able to hold their costs down, and that's one of the big reasons to leave them. I also know that this is a much more competitive market than it was 6 years ago. When we were looking at leaving Tri-State, when I came onto the board, there was a power supply committee going on, looking at the pricing. The pricing was much better at that time. It was much less expensive to the PPAs for solar, for instance. But because of delays and because we weren't able to do the partial requirements, which would have been fabulous, we would have been able to stay with Tri-State, and we would have been able to carve out like half of our power from cleaner sources and more local sources. But because those both failed, thank mostly, I think, to FERC, but also because Tri-State's a big thing and it's hard to get new things going with a big entity. But because that failed, we weren't able, we had to keep on looking of what's going to be the best power to use. I'm going to relate this to a question I also saw in the chat about the biggest concerns, and one of it was, sorry, now I lost it. But it was about the power supply and how important that is for us. Oh, I know it was, but why did you leave Tri-State if you don't know what your future is? We know the future is money for everybody, and including for Tri-State, but we certainly know what direction that mud flow is going. And that power supply committee never died. Every single finance and audit committee meeting that Tim chairs, there's a discussion about power supply. A lot of it has to happen in executive session because we are in competition with Tri-State, and because we are using some vendors who have proprietary knowledge. I guess I have to put it that way without outing them. So because of that, we're kind of stuck. So to say that we haven't been looking at power supply for the last 6 years is kind of silly. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to just call you silly. It's not silly. It's just now you know that we have been looking at it. We know where it's going. We would not have made this step if we didn't know we could get that power. That now the actual cost. That was the second part of your question, Karen. And how am I doing on time, sweetie? I don't.
Little over, but
Okay, sorry. Actual cost, I don't know what the actual cost would have been to stay with Tri-State, and I don't know what the actual cost is to leave. I know that when we do the comparison, it's very close. And from a dollar standpoint, it's super close. From a flexibility standpoint, we're miles ahead. From a being able to serve our members with local power, we're miles ahead. From a cost thing, it's pretty darn close from everything that I've seen. Thank you.
And Tim Wheeler, the same question. What are your biggest concerns for the split from Tri-State? And what do you think the actual cost will be to members? Although Kirsten probably answered it all, that you don't necessarily know the cost.
So the question is, what's my biggest concern and what will it cost? Is that?
Yeah.
So, yeah, my biggest concern is to ensure that we meet the sort of shared vision that I think this community has for for affordable, stable rates that come for paying for power that comes from clean energy sources that are as locally situated and owned by LPA as possible. So reliability is hugely important, but reliability is handled through balancing authorities that are government controlled, if you will, or regulated. And so the reliability question, is one in which there are already safeguards to ensure that that happens. The real opportunity for us, I believe, is in a long-term, stable set of prices. Whereas in the marketplace now, prices vary significantly. Generally, they go up, right? So I think that's a great opportunity for us. And that's also my biggest concern, right? How do we make this transition into those longer term stable rates with clean renewable sources of energy, ideally as locally sourced as possible, that provide us the sort of autonomy and self-control that I think our members want. And what's the cost? Well, the cost to exit this has been described in a couple of regulatory filings. It's variously $209 million, something like that. That's before any kind of utilization of any kind of capital credits that we would have with Tri-State. And yet those numbers are estimates because FERC has not finalized what that number will be. And in fact, it probably will not be finalized until a month or two before our exit, right? But we're in the ballpark and we're using those kinds of numbers to estimate what we have to do in terms of payment, and also what we have to do in terms of sourcing, replacing the power supply from Tri-State with a much cleaner set of generators, and then match that up to a final number that will show up in rates.
All right. Thank you, Tim. That's all great background information. And I'm glad that you have a ballpark to work with, because people can extrapolate from that. So
Yeah, those numbers can be found in regulatory filings if you
I've seen it
really
before.
want to dig.
The rest of the questions are for all candidates, but the first one I had is, tell us about your experience in energy, but you all did that in your opening statements really well. And the next one is, tell us about your plan for renewables. So I'll start with Kirsten.
Karen, I really hate going first, but I will because you asked me to. Plan for renewables. In my mind, and I need to preamble this. Tim, thanks for reminding me. I'm supposed to say I'm here as a candidate. I'm not speaking for the board. Okay. So as a candidate, I think renewables have to be bigger than rooftop solar. I think rooftop solar is maybe helpful for some folks. I'm putting a little bit of rooftop solar on with a battery, mostly because I'm pretty far out here and we do lose electricity sometimes. But it's not gonna help my fellow members with their electricity. I think things like the solar garden, I think things like some of the big plants that are going around. There's one that Tri-State's building that we may be able to buy some electricity from. There's all sorts of places. So I think the bigger projects, I think the hydrogen is just amazing. The work that's happening on hydrogen, I don't think is ready for prime time, but I think it will be. I think the small nukes, I think that's renewable, but it has its own baggage. But I think the safety, coming from the Navy, we haven't lost a nuclear sub, and we're talking about the same size of power plant on those for those micro nukes. So I think it's a good way to go forward. And what else about renewables? I think in general, it's good. I think we have to be not concerned. I think we always have to be aware of capacity. We need to make sure that when the sun isn't shining and the wind's not blowing, and that happens a lot, you have your other you either have your storage, which you see growing a lot, or you have other options. You have natural gas, you have hydrogen burning, you have nukes, and you unfortunately still have coal. Thank you.
Okay. Next is Dusty, Tim, and then John. We'll keep that order going. And yes, Kirsten, you will be first. All right, Dusty.
Sorry, Kristen, I going first too, but I liked what you touched on there about the nuclear aspect. I was able to work on those power plants with the submarines and aircraft carriers, and yeah, we've been running those things with 18 to 25-year-old men and women for 50 plus years, right? And no accidents. So it's everything that is scary about nuclear can be overcome, and so. Again, when the technology it gets to that point, I think it's important for the board to look at that carefully, very carefully, and make sure that we're doing it in a way that doesn't end up with radiation hotspots in the U.S. like we have our methane hotspot here in the San Juan Basin. If you looked into and ranked renewables in order of kind of dependability and availability, wind power comes up as number one. It's highly scalable and cost effective in suitable locations. We're not one of those locations for wind. And the amount of energy that goes into the steel and the lubricants and the amount of raw earth elements that go into those things, if you take the full scale or the full cycle carbon footprint of those wind turbines, you'd be shocked. Right? We've done this as a kind of an intellectual experiment at ConocoPhillips because they were an energy company and we were looking at trying to get as much as we could to and get the market cornered on this renewable energies. The problem is that our natural gas supply in the United States is 200 years plus. And we're operating right now on a 30-year gas price that low of natural gas, which when it burns, its only off product is CO2. You don't have the other heavy toxins that are the benzenes that go along with burning coal or with burning diesel fuels or even biofuels. So yes, it's not a renewable per se, renewable energy, but there are other methane generation systems out there. And some of those is biomass methane generation, which would utilize the exact same natural gas compression and natural gas distribution systems that we already have in place. So I think taking a different look or looking at the full scale carbon footprint of what you advocate for as being told that it is green or that it is less pollutant than other technologies, you really got to take that with a grain of salt and do your own research on it. Number two comes in is solar power, and it's widely adaptable. They're just decreasing costs now for solar. It used to be a lot more costly. But again, that intermittency, right? If my center pivot goes down in the middle of the night and I don't get water on my field, not only does my family suffer from that, but my customers do too, because I'm not able to get them all the product that they need. And so having solar or wind just isn't really going to work. The one that we did leave out, though, I see your hand there, Karen. I'll make it short. Is the geothermal? Again, that's a high cost add, but we're in Richland County, right? And geothermal assets are right here. We have the deepest natural hot springs in the world, and we need to, if we have the opportunity, to expand beyond that 5%, which was the only benefit to exiting Tri-State that I can see. We need to look into those things, and these projects take a lot of time. A 2-year window is very short. So, in fact, drilling a natural gas well is a year-long project. We've really got to get after this right now. And with that, I'll yield to the other candidates.
All righty, we're going to try and stick to the 2 minutes. When you hear that noise, I don't know if everybody can hear the noise my phone makes when it goes off, but I'm setting a timer. So next on that question is Tim, and the question was, tell us about your plan for renewables. And then John.
Well, it's not my plan for renewables, right? I'm one board member and a board of 12 people, right? And as one board member, I speak for myself and my members, trying to represent the members of District 4. And the board speaks with one voice when we vote, right? So my own opinion around renewables is it's kind of simple, right? I mean, we all have paid varying prices for our propane, or natural gas, or our gasoline to power our car, because fuel prices wander all over the place, right? And from my perspective, and it's a perspective I've had for a long time, is why would we pay for fuel when we don't have to, right? All that fuel that we dig up out of the ground, pump out of the earth, and then burn, and then release it as carbon dioxide into our atmosphere so that we can have really hot days and wild weather. Why do we do that when it's all sourced essentially from the sun, right? Without the sun shining on us, which is a renewable, inexhaustible as far as humankind is concerned, and costless, right? Source of energy. And the sun powers the wind as well, right? There is geothermal, as Dusty has pointed out, and that's also a really nice potential sort of, consistent generation of power. And there's a lot of opportunity for that in our area here. But why would we not be doing everything we can to obtain renewable power from the sun and its derivatives, its direct derivatives, rather than burning carbon in order to release it into our atmosphere and basically make life kind of really difficult for humans and other animals? So that's my opinion. Thanks.
All right. John Purser. Starting.
There we go. The whole conversation around renewables is incredibly interesting. And first off, I believe in climate change. I believe that greenhouse gas emissions significantly impact our weather. And so my approach to renewables is to really attack the problem. And the problem is greenhouse gas emissions. I've advocated for the last 6 years for policy that puts a price on greenhouse gas emissions, and talk to the wallet. As the price on carbon-based power goes up, alternatives will become relatively cheaper, and whatever the market provides. And I always like to say it's the way that incentivizes what we can't imagine. Subsidies and tax breaks only go to the current solutions we can imagine. If we want to create new ways of addressing this, put a price on carbon and drive that price up to the point that it incentivizes everybody to look for non-carbon based alternatives. One of the big problems, again, with, well, the whole concept around renewables. I mean, Tim's talking about the sun. I will grant the sun comes up every day. But you're also talking about batteries. How did batteries get in the conversation of renewables? They're still trying to figure out how to recycle lithium ion. And the amount of destruction of our environment that goes into mining is crazy. We have to look at total life cycle. Whoops, that's the 2 minutes. I can talk about this forever, but not today. Thank you.
Alrighty. Gwen, you want to get a question? There's one at 12:07 up in the chat.
Yeah, before I do that, there's about 7 people logged on as Dusty Mars, and they are putting things into the chat. And of course, we have no idea who's actually putting that in there. So I'm going to ignore all of those comments and questions that are being put in there. You can change your name on the thing to show us who you actually are. But there was also a question for Ted Compton. Ted is not a part of this panel, so I'm not going to do anything with that question. There's a question that says, will those of us who install solar panels on our homes help reduce new costs from the tri-state withdrawal?
That's a quick one. Do you guys need 2 minutes each to answer that? Kirsten,
No,
and then Dusty?
I don't know that I heard it all the way. Could you repeat that?
So will those of us who could install solar panels on our homes help reduce new costs from the tri-state withdrawal?
Yeah, no, it won't. I think right. I think I'm correct on how this is set up. So anything that we did locally, we're currently with Tri-State, we're capped at like a 5% of that being from renewable sources or from our own sources. And so and maybe in the future, after that's already gone, it would help us recoup it if we had solar, a lot more solar in the area available to feed the local grid. That would help drive some of the costs down. I hope that helps.
And Tim?
Well, if members put rooftop solar and participate in the net metering program, it does, to some extent, potentially reduce system-wide costs. It can also increase them if too many are in one area, and therefore they generate more power than is needed in that area. And that's kind of what has happened a little bit mostly in the city of Durango. There are areas for which there is not a sufficient load. In other words, use of electricity. And when you put too much generation there, there's a risk that it can backfeed into a substation, and that costs the system money to address that, right? But overall, in a larger context, yeah, it can reduce costs. It can also reduce revenue because someone is not paying a bill necessarily that is commensurate with the cost of the system. We are a co-op. We do not have shareholders that are seeking profit. We're a nonprofit. Any operating margin that goes over that is surplus gets returned back to the members usually within a 20-year period, right? So when we have situations where the revenue doesn't meet the cost, then that's to some degree taking money away from the members, right? So it's not as simple as a one-to-one. It depends a little bit on where and how much penetration of solar on the rooftop there is as to whether or not that will actually be a system-wide benefit. Generally it is, but not in every case. Thank you.
All right, John?
Rooftop solar is about the worst form of solar you can find. If you actually do the research and look at papers produced by MIT, Berkeley, Stanford, what it says is that it's about 3 times more expensive per watt produced than utility scale solar. It also says that people who have rooftop solar tend to use more energy than those that are being supplied by utility scale solar over the grid. This is one of the biggest dangers of subsidies and tax breaks. If you read the research, what you find is it's highly regressive. Tim talked about costs to upgrade the grid to handle microgrids or rooftop installations. Those are spread to the entire membership of LPEA. Also, the net metering trades out cheap daytime power for expensive evening power on a one-to-one basis. So again, that's a subsidy that we're providing. And when we provide that subsidy, it's highly regressive. Low-income earners have put more of their money into the bill as a percentage of their income than high-income earners. So it impacts them more. I understand that people want to be part of the solution and they see rooftop solar as that, but the reality is it's not. And if you read the research, you come away saying it's the wealthy white solution because you look at the demographics of who has rooftop solar, that's who has it. Also, the inefficiency. I drove down, there's a big push now, let's put it on bigger buildings. I drove down La Posta Road and saw a new installation of solar going on a company building. It was a north-facing roof. all you have to do, I mean, that's just crazy. I can't imagine the inefficiency of that. I walk around the East Lawn neighborhood and see installations of solar that are grossly inefficient. And that cost is being put across due to net metering to our other members. So no, rooftop solar is terrible. Sorry.
Okay, next question. How do you define reliability? And what percentage of renewable energy can we safely put in place to still retain virtually 100% reliable energy? Starting with Kirsten, it's how do you define reliability? What percentage of renewables can we put in place to retain 100% reliable energy?
So how I define reliability, I am sure there's a technical definition for that. When I say it, and when I say it to members, what it means to me is making sure the power is there when you need it. However it is created, wherever it is stored, it doesn't matter if you would turn on a switch and nothing happens. So the reliability of having it there. And reliability is increasing as much as energy choices are increasing, ways of gaining reliability are increasing. Being able to get our power from regional transmission authorities, having that rerouted around has brought a lot to folks, and we're not in an RTO right now. Colorado is not, and certainly we're trying to be, and so that's what reliability means to me. What percentage? Well, let's see. Costa Rica has had a couple of 100% days running on renewable only. That it won't happen. In order to do it, if we wanted to buy all renewables, we would have to overbuy. We'd have to be like 120% of our load or more, and then be able to store it. And don't quote me on the 120%, but it's going to have to be more. So that's when you have the geothermals, the nukes, the natural gas. And unfortunately, natural gas cleans well, but transportation of it really is awful, and that methane goes all over the place. So I'm not as keen on natural gas as you are, Dusty, but I can see where you're coming from on that. That's it for me. Thanks.
Okay, and Dusty?
I appreciate Kirsten's comments. It really comes down to consistency, and it's the ability to provide power without fluctuations or frequent changes, right? And so the sun's a great source, and it sets every day. Once you get the hole in the ground, it's going to provide that energy source for a long time. And there's never a zero cost with any energy source. You're always going to have some cost of conversion. And right now, everything is using petroleum resources to be able to create those conversions anyway. So, that's one of the better pieces about renewables that I felt was important, is it allows us to save some of these, limited natural resources within the earth to use for the other things that we will probably never be able to get away from, or not, at least in the near future. Use them for plastics, use them for transportation, and generate, power in other ways where we can. One specific place that I wanted to interject was micro hydro. There's several places on our irrigation systems where we have to manage the fall of large amounts of water through irrigation systems, and it's just begging for micro turbines to be put in. And unfortunately, in the United States, we don't have a lot of that technology available for purchase, but there are other places that are doing it, and it's something that we could definitely look at here. And I've actually put together some plans in place to be able to generate small 5 megawatt hydroelectric on systems that don't impact any of our wildlife or fish resources in the area.
Right, I didn't know much about micro hydro, but putting it on irrigation sounds like an opportunity. Tim Wheeler. Oh, sorry.
Okay, so reliability is pretty straightforward. You flip a switch and electricity flows and your light bulb comes on, or your fan or refrigerator or whatever, right? So reliability as a definition from the member viewpoint is it's there when I need it, whenever, right? So what was the second question?
It was, what percentage of renewable energy can we safely put in place to still retain virtually 100% reliable energy?
Well, I mean, that's a question that has a complex answer, if you will, right? So it depends a lot on what is the source of the renewable, wind, solar, geothermal, microhydro, whatever, right? So, and they all have what are called performance factors. They may be rated for a certain amount, but because of their intermittency, they may not produce that all the time, right? They generally don't, right? So, so then you make up for that with either a storage solution, and storage isn't just lithium ion batteries. It can be many different things. It can be pumped hydro. It can be iron air. There are other types of storage systems. There's various ones. Either through a storage system or by widespread utilization of that and the ability to transmit that power from those widespread areas to the load that needs it at the time, right? So for example, if there's a transmission that can occur from, eastern New Mexico, wind as the sun goes down here, then we end up with that reliability, right? I hear this a lot. Well, the sun goes down every night. Yeah, and the wind keeps blowing and there's storage and it's not going down everywhere all at once at the same time. So there's a lot of opportunity in the widespread utilization of this. And right now we bring power from the northwest corner of Colorado. That's coal-fired. We bring it from North Dakota, where we buy it from Basin. 60-some% of our power mix right now is coal. And it's not just Tri-State. There's a PPA that produces about 30% of our power from Tri-State that comes from like Basin Co-op up in not Basin. It's a different Basin Co-op than the one you buy your fuel from here in Durango. But it's up in North Dakota. So they transmit a lot of this. And the same kind of thing can happen with renewables. It will take some time. There is a transition. We will be using power that is generated by burning stuff for a while. But we, at the moment, have no choice about that because Tri-State makes that choice for us. What we get is the opportunity to make our own choices here. I represent members in La Plata Electric, not Tri-State. Tri-State represents a whole bunch of members that have nothing to do with us. And there's an old saying, if you've seen one co-op, you've seen one co-op.
It's a good place. Thanks, Tim. John Persa, the question again, how do you define reliability and what percentage can we do to still retain 100% reliable energy?
We have to be connected. Well, for one, reliability, as I've mentioned, local control is me hitting the light switch and having power. And that's what it is to our members. And we have to keep that in mind. As has been touched upon, in order to maintain reliability, we have to be connected to a wider grid. And if anybody has a look at those big power lines feeding our power in right now, they're owned by Tri-State, which is the cooperative that we're planning to leave. So again, we've touched on we have to have a relationship with them going forward. Yeah, absolutely true, because that guarantees our reliability. I also think when we talk about a diverse set of local sources running this huge gamut of different types of power, we're going to have to upgrade the grid for that. We're going to have to probably add new substations. We're increasing the complexity of our grid. And we're increasing the issues of local management of that grid and the new pieces going into it. Reliability tends to suffer with complexity. And I see us adding a lot of complexity without a firm idea of how it's meeting our objective. The objective is reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. That's a separate objective than having local sources of generation. Look what happened in Texas when they removed themselves from the wider grid and had a failure. I forget the numbers, but it was fairly stunning, leading up to the death of people that their health required them to have electric devices working in their homes. We literally, reliability becomes life and death. Also, our economic well-being depends upon dependable power. If businesses can't run, if we can't get to our businesses because power is down, it's an issue. Keeping it simple, keeping connected to the wider grid are essential for reliability. Thank you.
Righty. We're gonna go to closing statements. I know I mentioned it was till 1:30, but since we only have the 4 candidates, we're gonna make a tighter video. We put it online and hopefully you can share with everybody. And it'll be a shorter, tighter video. So a 2-minute closing statement from everybody to wrap it up or add new information or whatever you want to talk about. Kirsten?
Yes, let me go first, Karen. Thank you. I really appreciate you and I appreciate the Dems for putting this on. I really appreciate the level of discussion. Dusty, this is my first time chatting with you in an off way, but I'm impressed and I'm really looking forward to it. And I still want to beat you, but I think you're a smart guy and I'm looking forward to working with you. As far as closing arguments, let's go. We got a lot of work to do and let's go. I did want to touch on geothermal a little bit. I did a project with DOE in 2009. I forget the year. In Pagosa, we drilled we had 5 thermal gradient wells to drill because we were trying to figure out where's the hotter water. We never did find it. We took over a non-performing project. It was a 7-year project. After 5 years, they were non-performing. So I basically had 2 years to do 7 years worth of work. We got a lot of drilling done. We got a lot of information. We've got a lot of core up at the Colorado School of Mines. Really proud of that project. I don't see geothermal as creating electricity around here, but man, is it a great way to do direct heating. And my business in town uses geothermal for heating part of the sidewalk and for heating our whole building. So it's fabulous. I'm a geothermal fan and I'm starting to go down that path. So vote for me, you guys. And I like to say vote early and vote often, but I think I get in trouble for that. Don't forget, you don't have to pay for your stamp. You know, it's free address. Just put it on and tell your friends and get out there. This is important. We got a couple of busy years coming up. Thank you so much.
Righty. Dusty Mars in closing.
Yeah, thanks again. I appreciate this opportunity. It's the first time that I've run for a board that's on the public or hasn't been, selected by a group of experts. So it's fun to do. Touching on some of the concerns that we didn't necessarily get to in our discussion there, and as Kirsten pointed out, we have to be really innovative and we got to do it quickly to try to manage the situation that we're in this exit. So I know it'd been talked about a lot in the past, but pulling the trigger on it seemed premature to a lot of the members that I'd talked to in the past. And I've been attending, I guess, the board meetings virtually. It's great that those are recorded on the La Plata Electric website. And you go back and attend those meetings and kind of get a feel for how you feel you're being represented Is the things and the decisions being made by the board the way you wanted them to be done? And are you taking some accountability on yourself to reach out to your representative and let them know which way you want things to go? You know, it's easy to point fingers if you did it in the dark and nobody saw you doing it. So basically, I think the major reasons besides being asked to run is that we need a diversity in representation. I think that's just evident by this conversation. We need a diversity in representation to make well-rounded decisions that serve everyone's interest. And, you know, by electing someone with my background and experience, I can ensure the broad range of perspectives is considered, from technical innovation to environmental sustainability, because I've done it before. And I have support from a majority of the stakeholders in my district. They trust me to represent their interests. The biggest thing, like Kirsten said, is to vote. Make your vote, make your voice heard. Figure out who aligns with your agenda and your perspectives, and send in that ballot. My background in various engineering disciplines, and combined with that hands-on energy experience, I think it really positions me pretty uniquely to advocate for those interests in all of our community members. And so, you know, thanks again for your time and your consideration. This is a great platform.
Righty. Next is Tim Wheeler.
Thank you. Thank you again for having this forum, and for the people who are participating on it. I want to make one clarification here, that there is no violation of LPEA policy with regards to the information on my website or my Facebook page, despite what anyone might say at this point. Go look at it. I have nothing to hide here. I'm very familiar with those policies, and I know that I have not violated them. That out of the way, you know, I've spent 6 years on this board, and I have developed a great body of knowledge, experience, wisdom. I still have a lot to learn, of course. This is a very complex subject matter to deal with. But I'm ready and I'm motivated to continue to serve my members, our members, all of us, and LPEA for another term. I'm eager to do so. And I think there's a lot to be done yet, especially in the bridge that we have to cross to get to the more stable rates as we exit, right? As we exit tri-state and build a power bridge to get to a place in a few years where we have our own assets and long-term contracts, long-term being 10, 15, maybe 20 years, for much cleaner power that is very stable in rates, that will provide a very strong boost to our local economy. With your vote, I will continue to use my leadership skills to make sure that transition into our energy future is a good one, and that it meets the promise it foretells. Again, I'll mention that the ballot is supposed to be sent around September 12th. I encourage everyone to vote, and I ask you to please vote for me if you live in District 4. And I really want to thank the other candidates for being on here today. It's been a pleasure to talk with everyone. Thanks.
Thank you, Tim. And you mentioned ballots will be sent out next week, the 12th?
My understanding is that they will be mailed from their origination. I think it's in Minnesota on like the 12th. So not sure when they will get here. Exactly.
All right. Soon.
August.
All right, and I hope we have a better turnout now. LPEA suffered. Yeah, I know you're coming. I would just want to say, tell all your friends and neighbors, because LPEA always has a low turnout. We need to fix that. Drive it up, get everybody involved. And John Purser, close us out.
Well, that's interesting about Tim's website. Obviously, the person who built it and maintains it's been very busy in the last hour. I would have had more respect if Tim had actually said, oops, we made a mistake.
Well, there is no mistake, John. Frankly, there's none, and there hasn't been. Sorry. And I don't appreciate you're like calling me a liar, because that's not really a good thing.
Fine, guys, because I know you guys know each other. So
I gotta say, people who know Tim well, vote for me. And Tim, you're behaving like print screen doesn't exist. There'll be a complaint lodged with the Electoral Supervisory Committee today. Number two, to wrap it up, this board is well aware that the membership at large didn't support the exit from Tri-State. 3 years ago, when I suggested it should be a member vote to exit the Tri-State contract, and you can go back and look at the local first forum when I suggested it should be a member first vote or a member vote to exit. Tim Wheeler and Ted Compton both immediately opposed that. And the reality is they know if it was a total membership vote, they would have to justify the cost. They would have to have a plan. As Kirsten pointed out, we have a lot to do in 2 years to be ready for this. It's like stepping off a cliff with a parachute and then pulling out the manual for the parachute. If you look at Sunnyside, they were well over 2 years into that project when they even told us what the subscription cost for it would be. Also, you should note on Sunnyside that they put a 5% premium for members for locally sourced power. Is that any way to control costs? This board needs some.
I'm still here. John, you froze up for a second and you have 20 seconds left. Turn off your video. We can hear you, if you can hear me. Oh,
Looks like he lost connectivity.
yeah. Well, okay, well, we'll let that go out. Thank you, everybody, for participating. This has been very, informative. We got into the weeds on a lot of stuff I didn't know about, so I think people will really appreciate it. I put announcements at the end, which is the Dems announcements, so join us at some events. And thank you, everyone who joined us on this Zoom. Virtual applause to all our candidates.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Take care.
Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.